Hi and welcome to this pilot episode of OnMaths. Today we're going to see how to access our papers online, go through key Edexcel topics to revise, and look at a demon question. Enjoy! Hi, I'm Chris Gilpin and welcome to our first ever episode of OnMaths. So let's get started. First thing I want to do is show you how to access our papers online. I know a lot of you have been doing, in fact thousands of you have been logging on per day over the last few weeks and practicing the exam papers we have online. So I'll just talk you through it if you haven't already. So first of all, you go to our website and this page is going to change quite a lot, I think, because it's looking a bit cluttered at the front, so I'll simplify it a little bit. You go to predicted paper 1 or 2, depending on which one you want to try, and you get a sort of welcome screen, and it shows you that it's the paper 1 for June 2016, although a lot of you have pointed out it's actually in May. And you click start paper to get going. And now each question, the numbers in the question, the graph and everything else will subtly change, so you can have a go at doing it multiple times, and you won't just remember answers. So let's have a go at this one. So I think it's going to be negative. I'm not going to put an answer to that. And when you're ready, you click mark, and it will show you how many marks you got for the question or for each part of the question. So I got the question 1 right, 1 mark out of 1, but I didn't get question 2 right or question B right because I didn't answer it. When you click next question, it comes up with this graph. On the left hand side, that's the total marks you could have got. On the right hand side, that's how many marks that you have got. The grade boundaries here also, you can see when you've got an E or a D or a C, and you can see how far you are away from getting the grade above. Now these grade boundaries are estimates. I'm going to do another video on this, but there's generally a 10% variance in each of the grades. So a C grade can be anywhere between 25% and 35% roughly. So it's quite a difficult thing to predict, and actually it's not until after you've done the exam that the exam boards come up with the grade boundaries. So it's absolutely impossible to know before we get started. So that's all I wanted to discuss on that. Please feel free to go onto the website. It's completely free. A lot of you have requested lots of different things. The biggest request I've had so far is to do a predicted paper for AQA and OCR. It's in the works, but it's going to take a long time to do. There are things that are the same between the exam boards and things that are different, and the things that are different are taking a little bit of time to do. If you are with AQA or OCR, I would heavily recommend that you do the Edexcel predicted paper. There are an awful lot of the same topics that so far when I've done the analysis for AQA and OCR that are coming up again, such as trial improvement, cumulative frequency, etc., algebraic manipulation. They all ask the same types of question. There are some differences though, so it's worthwhile eventually, hopefully, as soon as possible, doing those predicted papers. Some of you have requested that I do the foundation papers as well, and that's also hopefully going to come as soon as I can. The foundation questions are slightly easier to make, I hope. I'm hoping that they are. The other requests I've had is for some way of saving your scores. I'm looking at doing a login system, but we'll see how that works and how quickly I can get that up and online. Some of you are asking for a list of topics that you've done well at, list of topics that you need to revise at the end of the paper. I think that's a great idea. That's something else I'm looking at doing. And some of you are asking that first of all, it shows how many marks are after the question before you press mark, which I'm going to look at doing, and also that it. What else are you asking? Also, I've got it written down. Also, that it shows you the actual answers to the questions when you click for answers. So I'm looking at a way of doing that. It's not as easy as you may think, because there are some questions that there aren't right answers. The algorithm I have just checks that you've got the right answer, but there's not necessarily a correct answer. So I'm looking at ways of doing that, and especially for graphs as well, it's not as easy. So that's an update on that. The Next thing I want to discuss is obviously the Edexcel Topics. Like, what are the topics to revise? So if you're sitting down and you've got 3 hours to revise topics, hopefully you'll have a lot more time than that. I mean, you've got 55 days from the time of recording this video. But if you had 3 hours, what topics would you choose? Now, to come up with the predictive papers, I have done all of the statistics on what has come up in the past. I mean, some people do predictive papers for what they feel comes up the most. I'm a mathematician, a scientist. We do things statistically. So what I've done to help me out with this is created this Excel spreadsheet. Now, this is a simplified version of it. It actually goes down a heck of a lot. I mean, I think there's something like 400 different topics that I've identified. I've also got all sorts of statistical analyses on this, but I've just left one of them, which is the probability. And the probability basically finds out how many papers the topics come up in, and how many papers I've looked at, and then just works out as a percentage. It's that simple. But it's really good for us to go through and rank them in that order for the purposes of this video. For the predictive papers, I've obviously looked at what was most popular on the calculator paper, what was most popular on the non-calculator, so you roughly have an idea of what topics will be with what paper. There are some topics that go across both papers, and there are some topics that are only on one paper. If the topic is use your calculator to work out this, then it would not make sense it was on the non-calculator paper. To help show you this information, I've just written down the topics and how often they've come up. So these are the topics that have come up 40% or above of the time. So they've got a 40% chance of coming up. Looking through it, algebraic manipulation is a must to revise, absolute must to revise. It comes up time and time again across all the papers. So that's factorising, expanding. It's the questions that have an A to E, so A, B, C, D, E, and asking you for different things. Making X the subject, sometimes it's on its own, but that's absolutely worth revising. Scatter graphs, questionnaires, cumulative frequency. Now, an important thing to note is the way I've done this means I'm looking for the questions that come up the most. Topics such as, say, probability have so many different types of question. They come up on my spreadsheet as different things. Data generally, if they're going to ask a scatter graph question, it'll always be the same type of question. They'll always be asking about the same thing. What type of correlation is it? Now estimate this value. So although it looks like data comes up more than any other topic, it doesn't. It's just the fact that they're a lot more predictable. And it means if you've got 3 or 4 hours to revise, then these are the topics you revise, because they are the ones that are likely to come up in that form and they don't involve a huge amount of revision. If you have slightly longer than 3 or 4 hours, these are the topics you would start with. Make sure you're absolutely happy with that. Looking at the topics, I mean, they're generally sort of C grade, maybe a bit of B grade as well. So if you're looking for an A or A star, yes, make sure you're absolutely perfect at these topics, but also you'll need to move on to the A and A star grade topics. Now let's move on to the 30 to 40% chance. So you can see here again, I mean, you've got algebraic manipulation, cumulative frequencies come up again, stem and leaf as well for the data, and some basic and advanced probability. Now the bottom 3, I would say, are the ones worth spending time on, definitely at this point. Best value, you'll get an amount of biscuits and a price, amount of biscuits of a different one and a different price, and you'll ask, right, which one is the better value? It just involves dividing. And again, I've gone through all the topics you're going to see mainly on the predictive paper walkthrough that I've done. So if you're not sure, have a look at that paper, and I'm sure a caption will come up somewhere up there telling you where the paper is, I would imagine. Although, who knows, I might forget. Looking at the next one, sampling, very simple stratified sampling. If you do relative frequency, it's the same process. You find the fraction of it and then times by the sample size. It's very, very simple, easy one to revise. And trial and improvement. Now, trial and improvement at one point came up every single year, and myself and other teachers said to each other, right, you make sure they do trial and improvement. That's the key one. And of course that year it didn't come up at all on the June or the November papers. So that's the difficulty of doing these predictions, is that you can't guarantee that these topics are going to come up, but you can play the odds and you can make sure that you do enough revision that actually most of what you're revising will come up. And it will be annoying if you have a look at this list and all that stuff come up and you didn't revise it, so it's worth revising. So when you're happy with these topics, what do you move on to? Well, these are the next frequent topics, 20 to 30%, and as the probability goes down, there's more and more topics. I mean, I've just put the topic names rather than whether they're algebra or show-space measure, because there's just so many of them. I mean, you can see transformations in there, sequences, you've got histograms, you've got a whole range of things there, and trigonometry and Pythagoras, they come up in lots of different questions, sometimes together, and sometimes in bearings question you might get them, and yeah, I mean, they're all there for you to see. Now, if you are struggling to view these things on the screen, if you're viewing this on a mobile or a tablet, which I know a lot of people do, I've got all this stuff on the website, so everything I'm going to go through is all on the website. I've created an article with all of the pictures so that you can download them or do what you want for them. I'm sure the link will come up here now. Again, if I'm smart, if I'm alert, the link will come up and you just click on it and it will have all the pictures, everything, so you can download them. And then we've got the 10 to 20% chance topics. Now, I've not gone any further than that because there's just too many topics to put on the screen. But you can see, I mean, these are the topics worth revising, obviously, but make sure you prioritise and make sure you do the other topics first. But I mean, I can remember an awful lot of questions on an awful lot of these topics. So first and most important ones to revise are these ones, then these ones, then these ones, and then when you've got time, you've done all the other ones, or there's some A or A star grade stuff that maybe you didn't feel there was enough of the difficult stuff on the earlier slides, then you move on to this one. I hope that's clear. If there's any questions on that, please comment on YouTube or send me a Twitter tweet thingy-bob, and I'm more than happy to go through it. Now, to end today, I want to have a look at a demon question. Now, this is a previous exam question that has vexed people. It's asked for something slightly different, something out of the norm, and let's have a look at it. Now, there was only one choice for our pilot episode. It's the most famous type of demon question that there is. I think all of you know probably what this is going to be. It is, of course, Hannah Sweet's problem. So if I zoom in on that, if you want to pause the video and have a go at this, please do so now. Otherwise, let's go through it. So, if you watch my other videos, I always like to go through highlighting these a little bit and checking that I understand the question. So there are n sweets. Oh, I get this right. There are n sweets in the bag. 6 of the sweets are orange. She eats the sweet. That's an important point. And the probability that she eats 2 orange sweets is 1/3. Now, the best way of starting this type of question off, I think, is ignoring the algebra. Obviously, the difficulty in this question is the fact there's algebra in it. But let's ignore that. Let's say that there are 10 sweets. So I'm saying that there's 10 sweets in that bag. Now, the probability of picking orange is going to be therefore 6/10. Okay? If she eats the sweet, which makes it not an independent probability question, it makes it a conditional probability, it means the probability will change. There is going to be 1 less orange sweet. Therefore, the chance of her picking another orange sweet is going to be 5, because she's eaten 1, and there's not 10 anymore, there's 9. And it's the probability of this and this. The word and in probability means times. So I would times the tops, so 30/90. Now I could carry on and say that's 1/3. I'm not going to bother. Now there's not 10 sweets. I've just made up that number. But by making up that number, I've completed the question and I've reminded myself how to do it. So this is the real answer, the real question. There's still 6, but there's no longer 10. The question says there's n, so I'm just going to say n times. Now there still will be 5 left, so I can still say 5. Now what did I do to 10 to get to 9? Well, I just took away 1. Now here's a piece of advice that is going to help you severely. Always put brackets around algebraic expressions that are in fractions. It will always help you. So equals, and we've got 30, same as before, but this time we've got n times n minus 1. Now that's a linear bracket. I've got to times the n by the first n and the n by the minus 1 to expand it. I'm just going to expand it straight away. So it's n squared minus n. Now it says in the question that it equals a third. So 1/3 equals 30 over n squared minus n. Now at this point what I can do is I can times 3 both sides and times this, which I need to put into brackets, and times this both sides. Now I can do this separately or I can just do it all in one go. So I'm going to times this to this side, so that leaves me n squared minus n times 1, which is just n squared minus n, equals, and 3 times 30, which is 90. Then I'm just going to take away that 90 from both sides, n squared minus n, take away 90 from both sides, and you can see now n squared minus n minus 90 is what it says in the question. So the key point of that I'm trying to make is, yes, there's going to be a question with algebra in it. It's going to be shape, space, measure, data, number. It could be any of those topics, any topics within those. But just try and figure out how you do it if there wasn't algebra in it. And you will absolutely be happy, you will understand it, and it will become a lot easier question for you to do. Okay, question over. So that's the demon question. Actually, it wasn't as difficult as the newspapers last year made out. The important thing with this is to realise that you are not competing against the exam. You are competing against everyone else taking that paper. Everyone else last year saw that question. The difference between the people who did well and people who didn't is the people who did well looked at it and went, right, let's try and remember what that weird YouTube guy said to do. Let's put a number into that question. Let's try and do it with a number. And then figure out how I did it with that number and just use the letter instead. And it's that simple. So I'm going to look at a comment every time I do a video, either from YouTube, Facebook, Twitter or email. This week I'm looking at a comment made on YouTube. Now this comment said, won't this year's paper be filled with more challenging problem solving questions like Hannah Sweet's? Yes, I'm afraid guys, the questions will be like that. There will be questions like that. Not all of them, but there will be. You've got to prepare yourself with the fact that there will be questions like that. Once you've prepared yourself for that fact, you will be a lot happier when you walk into the paper and see them. Now, you might ask, right, how do I prepare for it? Well, they can't ask you things that aren't in the textbook and revision guides. All the difficult questions, the demon questions that I'm going to cover and that have been reported in the papers and that inevitably will be on the paper this year, all of them are based on topics you know. But you just need to make sure that you understand them at a point where you can cope with a little bit of a change in the question, a little bit of a change in the style. It's really, really good to make sure that you fully understand these topics. So for instance, with conditional probability, you have to have fully understood how to do it to be able to interpret it in an algebraic way. But a shortcut, as I said before, is just use numbers. If they throw algebra in there, use numbers first, work it out, and then go back to the algebra. If you had done that just with numbers, it could be that it was worth a few marks anyway. If you got the numerator of 30 on a fraction. I can't quite remember. I think that probably was enough to give you a mark. So it could be that you can completely ignore the twist of the question and still get some marks as well. You've got to be sure that you are prepared for the fact that there are going to be some questions with weird twists. The point of the predicted paper on the website is to help you with the questions that don't have those types of twists. And there are going to be the majority of those questions without the twists. Oddly enough, I mean, that was only a few marks. And yet that's the one that everyone remembered. People said they were failing because Edexcel were putting weird questions in. Well, looking at that paper as a whole, there weren't an awful lot of weird questions. In fact, there were an awful lot of very straightforward questions. So a bit unusual for people to panic too much about it. Just make sure when you walk into the exam and you see that one or two questions maybe, they're a bit odd, you go to it and try your best to answer it. Because if you can't answer it, chances are very few other people will be able to answer it. But if you can answer it and other people don't, then that puts you at a much higher grade than them. I think I've explained that. Any other comments on that, please let me know. And on that point, we've got a Twitter account which is growing rapidly. We've got a YouTube channel there, a Facebook account, and obviously the website. So if there's any questions, anything you want to discuss at all, please let us know. I'm really over the moon about the success of the website and the YouTube channel. Not so much the Twitter. I mean, I've got thousands of people logging onto the website, thousands of people watching the YouTube videos, and I think six people on Twitter. So if you can join me on Twitter, please do. I'm new to it. I've never used Twitter before, but it's not a very good first impression so far. Please, if you enjoyed this video, click like, which a lot of you have done. And if you want to see more videos like this, please click subscribe. Thank you.